Hello and welcome to this video comparing immunity from vaccines and diseases. The immune system is complex. The fact that we have been able to tame it in a way that can impart lifelong immunity is a powerful tool. Achieving immunity for as many diseases through vaccinations as we have is the primary driving force behind the fact that we have doubled the human population in 100 years. A feat that would take 500 or more years before that. The pinnacle of immunological research is still not enough for some people. Anti-vaxxers are perhaps the best example of this. Even if we do not focus on these special cases, there are some who deny the benefit of vaccines. These individuals claim that natural immunity is better than a vaccine. Why is this so? Or how does it differ from immunity gained from a vaccine, is often a novel argument that's rarely relying on science and more on anecdotes. Let's look at just what separates your natural and vaccine-mediated immunity. First, let's look at vaccines, as they are the simpler option of the two. Fundamentally, vaccines act as a means of training your immune system with an inert or deactivated version of the pathogen. This works as all pathogens have antigens. These are sites that match with a specific antibody. These antibodies flag the pathogen for the immune system. The training of this happens one of several ways. The traditional, or perhaps most tried and proven method, is to take your pathogen and deactivate it. This is done by destroying the pathogen. Influenza vaccines were developed this way for a very long time, and still is used in some cases. The virus is inoculated into a fertile chicken egg. The virus multiplies in the egg. This creates a large amount of the virus particle. While not as popular for all vaccines, eggs are still used because of how efficient this process is. They have in some cases been supplanted by cell-based production methods. Despite that, the following still applies no matter what. The virus is separated from the egg or other host. It's then heated or otherwise killed. This destroys the virus's ability to infect a new host or replicate any further. This can also be true of other diseases and pathogens. The vaccine still has all of its pathogen contents, but most are either not functional or damaged beyond any kind of resemblance. The bits that are not destroyed include the antigens from the pathogen. This could be protein spikes, proteins, sugars, and so on. This has created a sample of the pathogen which can be included in a vaccine. This sample is what the immune system sees and begins to react against. The immune reaction is where things will get a little complicated. Immunity requires the adaptive or acquired immune system. This is a large part of your immune system and what lets you remember and respond to a pathogen better when exposed again. This is called the subsequent infection or exposure. Of the cells in the immune system, one type is especially important for immunity from vaccines, and in fact immunity full stop in the acquired immune system. These are your B cells. B cells come in two forms, memory cells and plasma cells. Memory cells are what keep a track of what you have been exposed to. They also allow your immune system cells to proliferate in subsequent exposures after your initial exposure. This proliferation is important for B plasma cells. These cells are what make your antibodies. With proliferation, they can make a lot of antibodies. They can only do so if your immune system has a record of the original exposure that comes from your B memory cells. These are what will tell your body which cells to select and begin multiplying when subsequent exposures occur. Think of them as the ability to pull out the right record or the right file, open that file and start reading the instructions that are in it. The immune system gains both these B memory cells and B plasma cells after you get a vaccine. they are generated without the need for the same systemic immune response that a regular or natural infection would precipitate. The vaccine contains material beyond just a relatively inert carrier and the pathogen, but a range of adjuvants which help to stimulate the immune system. Adjuvants are an immune system stimulant. Examples of this can include cytosine phosphoguanine. This is a DNA type mimic, and it resembles in many ways what you would find in bacteria and viruses. These adjuvants help to stimulate other parts of the immune system that we will not provide detail about during this video. All that is important to understand is that these can cause other parts of the immune system to react that are not part of the B cells. These other cells help to amplify the signal. By contrast to all of this, the immune system generates immunity when you're infected by working in the opposite direction. It begins with infection. This infection is picked up by the host, and then it finds its way to where it has to be, whether this is something you've inspired, cut to your skin, a vulnerability in your GI tract. There are many ways it can happen. Eventually, the infection is picked up by the cells of the immune system. They begin by taking the pathogen back to be processed for its antigens. These are used to generate both the plasma B cells and antibodies that are needed to defend the host. This takes time. It also involves a lot of cells from the immune system, those that are not part of the adaptive immune system and those that are. This response to the pathogen is systemic. It's why you get very sick from influenza. The fever and inflammation affects most of your body. The local immune response is why you get a stuffy nose, sore throat, and headache. You feel tired because your body is putting all the energy into supporting the immune system. All of this is to make you healthy again. While your body fights off the infection, it is also trying to generate the immune cells needed. As the infection begins to trail off with your immune system winning, it also starts to create the B memory cells needed to generate a response to subsequent infections. After the infection is handled, your body has the necessary memory B cells to handle the reinfection at a later date. Preparation for this subsequent exposure is effectively what has been created when you get vaccinated, rather than having to go through this whole process the first time for an initial infection. Based on this, you can see there's very little difference in the final degree of protection given by a vaccine or a natural disease. The process of getting that protection is different. Natural diseases require that you not only be infected with the disease or a similar disease, but that you also experience the effects of this infection. Influenza is not a bad case study if you are a teenager, young adult, or even middle-aged. It can be life-threatening in the elderly and very young, in whom the immunological response can cause a lot more harm. Children could be sterilized by measles. Others can be crippled by polio. There are a myriad of other diseases which have rare but life-altering complications. Considering the number of diseases, and even if the side effects of infection are rare, it affects a relatively large percentage of the population. All of these things can be avoided with a vaccine rather than natural immunity, which is why it is in many ways far better to be vaccinated and far worse to gain what some describe as natural immunity, a term which is rather asinine given that the immunity gained via vaccinations and exposure to the pathogen is ultimately the same thing. One just has far fewer risks associated with it and avoids the need for the incredible discomfort and possible side effects of being sick. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions that you have below.